Welcome. Joe Volpe, publisher of Corriere Canadese, North America's only Italian language daily newspaper. Today, with a comment from the paper on behalf of GoLive TV and Corcan Media Group. It deals with the recently held First Ministers Conference. Squabbling First Ministers. They're Canada's kindergarten. Now, I'll show him. Now that's the churlish tone with which premiers from across the country decided to accept Prime Minister Trudeau's invitation to conference on national issues. One could predict the outcome. Grown men and women tripping over each other to demonstrate that they are serious people, really, constantly on the lookout for the interests of their constituents. And their enemy? Why, the rapacious designs of the federal government's strategies to keep the country united and growing. They embarrass themselves, and us by extension, with their childish, self-centered approaches to what constitutes national interest. Now, just to be clear, the Prime Minister did not emerge unscathed. Now, to understand the dynamics of interprovincial and intergovernmental relationships, one needs only to refer to Mayor John Tory. With a refreshing frankness during the recent municipal election, he identified his number one priority as to lobby for and extract as much money as he can from the federal and provincial governments as possible. Now, that money is levied from taxpayers in all parts of the country, or all parts of the province in this case. Mayor Tory would have some chutzpah demanding money from Atlantic Canadians to finance Toronto's infrastructure. But that's how the system works. And the premiers are no different. They're just bigger mendicants, meaner, more influential, not nation builders, despite their claims. Now imagine being invited to dinner and announcing to all of your friends you would accept only on condition that your favorite meal, prepared just so, is served. Then advising your host that if the meal is not just right for you, you might pick up and leave in a snit. Meanwhile, Canada faces some real challenges to its economy and its sovereignty, not least of those being the prevarications of the American presidency and our dependency on globalized economic dynamics. Despite the claims of Premier Notley of Alberta and her opposition, who are acolytes to the Republican Party south of the border, the downward pressure on oil prices is directly linked to the overabundance of cheaper oil produced elsewhere. Now, whether pipelines should be constructed to get more of our product to market may be a smart thing. After all, Canada is the world's fifth in terms of oil production, but it won't resolve Alberta's problems. In other words, its reserves are the costliest to extract and to market. Teaming up with anti-carbon tax advocates like Premier Ford may be popular, but it's unlikely to spur consumption and demand for Alberta Saskatchewan crude in the immediate term. Nor, from the auto industry's perspective, likely to reverse investments in hydrogen and electric-powered vehicles. From Ontario's perspective, cheaper Alberta oil is unlikely to influence decisions by auto assemblers like General Motors to relocate elsewhere. Publicly poking the Prime Minister's eye on carbon tax isn't a great strategy for attracting nationally driven industrial investments. The issue of the day, whether one sees the observation as alarmist or not, is the squeeze being put on our sovereignty by the squabble between the United States and China over former Canadian resident and CEO of Huawei Corporation. The economic consequences are not promising. Moving across the Atlantic, the Brexit will we or won't we proposal before the British Parliament may have a cascading negatives for Canadians, depending on the outcome. One of those relates to migration and labor mobility. Now, the UN's Immigration Compact may influence how Canada deals with the largely European and American, so far, illegal migration phenomenon. But as a blue sky concept, it may only serve as a guide. However, Canada is already witnessing the failure of its Immigration Quebec program, its Atlantic Pilot Project on Immigration, its shutdown of an arguably corrupt provincial nominee program in PEI, the reversals of the current Minister for Immigration on the issue of undocumented workers, 1 million of them in Canada, 400 to 500,000 in Ontario alone, or the emerging scandal associated with visas for sale schemes allegedly being investigated by both the RCMP and the press in the GTHA. None of the premiers spoke to the economic or social costs of this inaction. But that's what they have the power to do. Maybe, like the founder of the Bloc Québécois and former Premier of Quebec, Lucien Bouchard, they too think that Canada is not a real country. We're the poorer for it. Joe Volpe, on behalf of Go Live TV and Corcat Media Group, inviting you to stay tuned for our commentary first in Italian and subsequently as well in Portuguese. See you shortly.